Stormy Daniels' husband files for divorce and seeks restraining order. Trade war tensions pose a risk to global growth. Mexican leftist appeals to anti-establishment Trump to resolve NAFTA quickly. Iran's Rouhani threatens Trump with the mother of all wars. And Mexican food scientists have pioneered a food source to end world hunger and malnutrition. Hello and welcome to today's edition of Mexico News Network's Breaking News Business. I'm Elliot Bullman. Let's go to the information. Adult film star Stormy Daniels, who's battling President Donald Trump in court over their alleged sexual encounter a decade ago, and her husband planned to divorce, her lawyer announced on Monday. Daniels, 39, whose real name is Stephanie Clifford, married Glendon Crane, a heavy metal musician and pornographic movie actor, in 2010. Daniels, who's traveling the country for a series of strip club performances, had purchased a plane ticket for her daughter to join her on tour, Crane said in the divorce petition. Crane has requested a temporary restraining order barring Daniels from unsupervised access to their daughter and use of the couple's shared home. A court hearing regarding the restraining order is scheduled for Friday morning. This case has been gaining significant media coverage and legal attention due to the direct involvement of Donald Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, and the various contradictory statements Trump has made throughout the development of the matter. On July the 12th, Daniels was arrested in Columbus, Ohio, by undercover vice cops in a sting operation. Officers allege that Daniels touched 3 undercover officers in the club where she was performing, which is against Ohio law. 2 other female adult entertainers were arrested that night at the club for the same alleged violations. However, they didn't have their mugshots taken, unlike Daniels. The charges were dismissed less than 12 hours later, since the law doesn't apply to out-of-town performers. It was later reported that the lead detective on the vice squad in charge of the arrest was a supporter of Donald Trump. In other news, the G20 group of finance ministers have said trade tensions could undermine the global economy. They called for greater dialogue to reduce the risk following a tense 2-day meeting in Argentina. The summit comes as the US ramped up trade tensions on Friday, saying it was ready to slap tariffs on all $500 billion worth of imports from China. France's finance minister, meanwhile, said the European Union should not negotiate trade with a gun to its head. The G20 summit comes as a trade war has escalated in recent weeks after the US opened fire on the 6th of July with tariffs on $34 billion of Chinese goods. The US has since listed another $200 billion worth of Chinese products to be targeted and has threatened tariffs on an even greater amount. US President Donald Trump also described the European Union as a foe on trade last week. French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire warned that a trade war was now a reality at the G20 summit. He said the current US trade policy of imposing unilateral tariffs was based on the law of the jungle. But US Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin defended the tariffs and urged the EU and China to open their markets to allow free competition. In other news, Mexican President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador wrote to US President Donald Trump calling for quick NAFTA negotiations and for both leaders to reset relations between the two countries, Mexican officials announced on Sunday. In a news conference, Marcelo Ebrard, the president-elect's proposed foreign minister, read a copy of the letter, which states that the incoming administration's aim is to start a new chapter in the relationship between Mexico and the United States based on mutual respect. AMLO, who doesn't take office until December the 1st, also called for a redoubled effort to conclude renegotiations and revisions to the 24-year-old NAFTA agreement, which also includes Canada. Prolonging the uncertainty could stop investment in the medium and long term, which clearly could challenge economic growth, López Obrador wrote. The talks, which will be resumed on Thursday, have been stalled for several months after Canada and Mexico couldn't keep up with the US administration's demands, particularly that 75% of all car parts be sourced from the three countries in order to qualify for tariff exemptions. Since negotiations halted in May, the Trump administration, citing security risks, steel and aluminium tariffs on these imports from Canada and Mexico. In his letter, López Obrador said that migration, development and security are the main areas he wants to work on with his US counterpart. He reiterated to Trump his interest in working in depth on the problem of migration through a development plan that would include Central American countries. Moving on. The US President Donald Trump and Iranian President Hassan Rouhani have once again traded hostile warnings amid rising tensions between the two countries. Mr. Trump tweeted Iran would suffer consequences the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before if it threatened the US. Mr. Rouhani earlier said that war with Iran would be the mother of all wars. In May, the US left a deal which curbed Iran's nuclear activities in return for the lifting of international sanctions. Washington is now reimposing those sanctions despite objections from the UK, France, China, Russia and Germany, who all signed the 2015 agreement. But there are other flashpoints too. The US is deeply suspicious of Iranian activity in the Middle East and is an ally of Israel and Saudi Arabia, two of Iran's major foes. President Rouhani's comments made to Iranian diplomats did leave open the possibility of future good relations with the US. America should know that peace with Iran is the mother of all peace and war with Iran is the mother of all wars, he said, according to Iran's state news agency IRNA. On Sunday, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said he wanted to try to stop countries importing Iranian oil by November as part of continued pressure on Tehran. Addressing a group of Iranian Americans in California, he said the Iranian regime resembles the mafia more than a government. The gathering was the first time a top US official had directly addressed such a large number of Iranian Americans and is seen as part of the administration's strategy to increase pressure on Iran's leadership. Iran is one of the world's largest oil producers, with exports worth billions of dollars each year. It's already feeling economic pressures and has seen large-scale protests over rising prices and a decline in the value of its currency, the rial. In other news, academics and students from the National Autonomous University of Mexico have developed a tortilla fortified with protein, calcium, fiber, folic acid, probiotics and prebiotics, a formula that can help eradicate world hunger, obesity and malnutrition. According to the experimental work, these tortillas don't contain preservatives and consuming 2 of them is equivalent to drinking a glass of milk. The university students use a double fermentation process containing lactic bacteria and different organic acids that cause a decrease in pH and an increase in shelf life, which guarantees 2 months at room temperature and more than 3 months when refrigerated. The Working Group of Industrial Chemistry and Food Engineering of the School of Higher Studies Cuautitlán of the UNAM suggests that this food source can be an alternative for remote communities, where malnutrition and the lack of services such as electric light is a constant threat to nutrition. Researcher Raquel Gómez Pliego is leading this project and other lines of research that place fermentation as a potential methodology in the fight against obesity and diabetes. The specialist says that live microorganisms, probiotics and prebiotics have a beneficial effect on health since they exert a decrease in plasma lipid levels and chronic inflammation, causing diseases such as obesity, diabetes mellitus, cardiovascular diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's or even cancer. The tortilla also has a slightly sweet flavor and a different aroma than conventional ones, a characteristic that makes it the ideal complement for sweet and salty foods. The innovation is now in the process of becoming patented. And finally, let's check the markets. The Mexican peso decreased 0.19% to 18.84 from 18.88 in the previous trading session. On the other hand, the IPC Mexico decreased 0.12% to 48,851 from 48,748 in the previous trading session. This was all for today. Thank you for your company. I'm Elliot Bullman. Remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, and log on to MexicoNewsNetwork.com for more information on Mexico and the world. Until next time.